Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial's set correctly to USAPrepares.com. And if you'd like to take us with you as you travel, we have a listen line, 605-477-3249. 605-477-3249. Werner Bock's with us, New Brunswick, Canada. Welcome, Werner.
Yeah, good morning, Vincent, and good morning to the listeners. Hopefully we can contribute something that might be helpful.
Well, certainly. How are you feeling, Werner?
Oh, I'm okay.
Okay, very good. And it's always great chatting with you off the air, and I'm glad we had an opportunity to do that the other night. Werner, you were mentioning Gabe Brown, is that correct?
Yeah, I came across that gentleman. He's a farmer in, I think in North Dakota, and he's basically farming out of the box. You know, aside from the agenda that's been pushed by government agencies and by the so-called experts that want to tell the farmers how to farm, but that basically got no practical experience. It's easy to tell somebody how to do something when somebody else is footing the bill. But we farmers, we have to keep financially liquid, you know, and no matter what has been thrown at us. But I came across his YouTube there a while ago, and I spoke to him afterwards, and it runs right contrary to what the official agenda is. And I can speak about what's going on here in Atlantic Canada, you know, they call it the Maritimes, and in the New England states. And let's see what Mr. Trump is got up at his sleeves in regarding to sustainability of a food supply.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And let's see what he's got up his sleeves when it comes to not hiring any more government employees. And actually, wouldn't it be nice to fire half of them? That would be a good start. 3/4 of them would be a great point to reach. Fire 3/4 of government employees, because I don't think we need them. I can't imagine needing them. But Gabe Brown, he's got a ranch. Can you tell us what you've learned from him?
Well, basically, he's going back to sustainable agriculture, and he has been doing it for at least the last 20 years, and with good success. But this YouTube I was watching there, it was very interesting, and it showed an overall perspective what modern agriculture and chemical agriculture has done to the nutritional status of the people here in North America, not just only in North America, but in Europe too, and to the health status, you know. What has been praised and sold to us as being the great benefit for humanity and for mankind and for the environment, the chicken are coming home to roost now. It's exactly the opposite is being achieved. The health status has never been as bad as it is now in North America, and as you said, about too many people in government and living on government dough. I call it. They have to sell it to us like they are providing some kind of a service, but we need at least half of their services as much as we need another hole in the head. It's a glorified welfare. The government is buying votes.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, they don't. In history, the most potent disruptor of society has been the so-called intellectual class. The students, when they are not satisfied, and I remember there about 40 years ago, they were getting pretty militant, and they were saying, government told us to go to university and study, and when we would come back from university, there would be jobs waiting for us. Now we are coming back from university, we have done the studies, we have spent the money, and there are no jobs waiting for us. And when the government doesn't give us jobs, we gonna cause problems, create diseases and what else all. And we are then the only ones who can deal with the problems.
I'm looking at the Browns website. It's brownsranch.us. Let me just read a couple lines from here. It says, our ranch is located just east of Bismarck, North Dakota. Shealy and I purchased the ranch from Shealy's parents in 1991. And have grown the operation to 5,000 acres of owned and leased land. Son Paul returned to the ranch after graduation from North Dakota State University and became a partner in the operation. Daughter Kelly lives and works in Fargo, North Dakota, and returns home to help whenever possible. We believe in and practice holistic management, a part of which farming and ranching in nature's image. We strive to solve problems in a natural and sustainable way. Improving soil health is a priority, and no-till farming has been practiced since 1993. A diverse cropping strategy, which includes cover and companion crops, are used. We now have eliminated the use of synthetic fertilizers, fungicides, and pesticides. We use a minimal amount. We use minimal herbicide and are striving to eliminate it. We do not use GMOs or glyphosate. Our ever-evolving grazing strategy allows most of our pastures to recovery period of over 360 days. These strategies have allowed the health of the soil, the mineral and water cycles to greatly improve. In other words, the natural resources have benefited. The results in increased production, profit, and a higher quality of life for us. We're moving toward sustainability, not only for ours, but future generations as well. And there's an image, and I'll put this post on the website. There's an image of his cows, which looks similar to ours, black cows, standing in like knee-high grass, really tall grass. And, that's something that cows would love. It looks tender. It looks nutritious, and it's a great image of cows having a good time out in the field. It's the way it should be, and that's what we try to do here at our farm. He's gotten a head start on us, but we don't use fungicides. We don't use pesticides. We don't use herbicides, and we don't use fertilizers that are, we use cow poop as fertilizer. That's what we use. And isn't that what you have done in the past, Werner?
Well, I started out according to when I started out in farming. The soil was poor and it needed build up in order to get it up to a certain fertility. it's alluvial soil. It's basically the upper soil layer is leached out. But then I found out it was not that the people were lazy, what we were being told, that they didn't want to farm anymore here in the Maritimes. It was they had been sabotaged. The organic farmers, the sustainable farming has been sabotaged for at least the last 70 years with all kinds of chemicals, selective herbicides, long-term soil stimulants and everything. And then the farmers were being lied to by the so-called expert employed by the Department of Agriculture. And then massive cover-up by the law enforcement in criminal investigation. This is basically an environmental Watergate. When the public becomes aware of it, they're going to be up in arms. But I brought it to the attention of the environmental organizations. I brought it to the attention of the Green Party, and there is no action to be found there. They are basically yellow. Nobody wants to touch it because there is too much involved. A whole industry and a whole part of the economy has been created. I call it the trouble industries that deal with troubles. When farmers got troubles, when they got weed problems and so, where actually invasive weed species had been introduced together with selective herbicides to give them a head start. And this, as I say, it is unbelievable and massive cover-up by the police organization, law enforcement agencies that like to be called Canada's finest, by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And I have all the documentation. Massive cover-up in criminal investigation, destruction of evidence, and everything else.
So not only is it difficult to be a farmer and put at risk all the capital that we risk investing in our land, in our animals, in our crops. You're talking about sabotage to try to take us down. It's tough. It's really tough.
Vincent, you mentioned there about that you don't use any commercial fertilizer,
Right.
And I've been doing some research over the years, and like a tracking dog, going down a trail, and what you find out is it makes your blood boil.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's talk about fertilizers, commercial fertilizers, when we come back, and what your evidence has uncovered, or what your research has uncovered. We'll be right back. Werner Bock's with us, New Brunswick, Canada. Werner's a farmer, has been for decades, and we're talking about some farming practices. Werner, we've been talking about commercial fertilizer. Please tell us what your research has led you to uncover.
Well, this might be of interest. It's a Nova Scotia Department of Agriculture research station in Napan, Nova Scotia. They did an 80-year-long Greenland trial where they split the trial plot into 3 parts. One part, they treated it the way the farmers used to do. Every 3 or 4 years, they would put a good coat. Yields went up and stayed up, consistently. And the second lot, they used commercial fertilizer. The yields went initially, the first couple of years, they went up above the organically fertilized hay field, but then they dropped below the traditional hay ground,
Mm-hmm.
And every so often it was necessary to lime the ground because the commercial fertilizer was acidifying the soil, which was not necessary by the traditionally treated hay ground with put manure on. As you mentioned, cow poop,
Yeah.
It's organic, And the third lot, they did not replenish any nutrients. They just only cut hay year after year. And over the 80-year period of time, the yields went down to about 40-45% versus the other two lots. And they stayed consistently down at that level. And what I've noticed here, where I had put manure on, and initially in order to get the nutrient level up, because we were being told, oh yeah, the ground is leached out, it lost some potash and phosphorus and so on. And I limed it and everything, and it still wouldn't go up, the yield. But then I noticed when growing time came, in late winter, early spring, as soon as the fields were bare, then I noticed those small planes buzzing around here. But they were flying only over those fields of the farmers that were farmed the traditional way. But they were not bothering the fields of the farmers, the big dairy farms around here, that were farming according to the Department of Agriculture. And that way, they forced over the years, the traditional farmers, they forced them out. Unless those farmers had a lot of money to burn from other sources and were keeping the Chamber of Commerce in money by buying lots of machinery and so on, Mm-hmm. And then I noticed this one year, there must have come a sudden wind blast, and it, from a neighbor's field, the chemicals, what they were dumping on there, they were blown over onto the farm of this agriculture, New Brunswick Department of Agriculture farm, the ones that were promoted by them, with the grown corn and now GM corn and so on, and all the chemical regimen. And for the next few years, I followed up this patch. It was about 1.5 acres. You could see the damage that was done, But the neighbor, what I found out over the years, it has become very fitting when some of those big expanding dairy farms, when they have a family member or friend or acquaintance who flies a small plane. And this is basically a huge environmental Watergate and criminal Watergate, how they forced the adjoining farmer out of farming so the big dairy farms could gobble up the land, for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah. Drive farms into bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Werner, we come back, I'll tell you a little bit about what we've learned, and it's in concert with the study that you've been talking about. This is USA Prepares. I'm Vin Finelli. Werner Bock's with us. He's in New Brunswick, Canada. Werner, what I do here on the farm is, obviously, I'm very interested in efficiency. I'm interested in not wasting money. And when I first became a farmer in the late 1980s, I was introduced to the Soil and Water Conservation District guys, and they would talk about commercial fertilizer and so forth. And, I followed their practices, and you're absolutely right. What happens is if you do nothing, you'll end up with poor fertility and poor yields in your hayfields. And if you use commercial fertilizer, you'll almost instantly see dramatic results. But then you've got to lime the fields, and it's it's a non-ending cycle of fertilizer, lime, and it's really quite expensive. And what I decided to do was buy something called a chain harrow. It's about 10 feet by 10 feet. And it's like a really heavy chain link fence. And you pull it behind the tractor, and when you, in fields where the cows have just left, there's manure. And what I do is I drag this chain harrow through the fields, and I spread out those manure piles. And over the years, after about 3, 4 years, what I've noticed is our fields now look like golf courses. Of course, we have to, cut them and take down the saplings, with a mower. And but the fields really look green and lush, and we haven't fertilized in a long time. So what I'm saying is I totally agree with what you're saying about using organic fertilizer. Actually, cow poop is pretty much all we use. Actually, that is all we use here at our farm. And what we do is we feed the hay that we take off those fields. We cut the hay during hay season, and we roll it up in these 1,000-pound rolls. Then we unroll it for the cows in the wintertime. And we roll it not in the same place all the time. We unroll it in a different place.
Yep.
And we go across the field, and we let the cows do two things for us. Number one, the cow waste becomes fertilizer. And the seeds, when we cut the hay, we don't do it exactly as we've been told to do it. We've been told that, you need to cut the hay before it goes to seed. We cut it just after it's gone to seed. And that way, when the cows eat the hay, they will step the seeds into the fields and reseed the fields for us. So we don't have to use this expensive machinery or rent machinery and buy seeds to reseed our fields. The cows do it for us. So the only thing that we really have to do is cut the hay, maybe ted the hay depending on the weather, rake the hay, bale the hay, and feed the hay. And the cows take care of, and we have to cut the fields maybe once or twice a year to make sure that the weeds and the saplings don't pop up in the fields. And just by doing those things and having the cows, many of our fields look like golf courses. They really do. And they're quite fertile. So it works. You can do it the natural way. And I'd like to read to you something that I just read on the internet. And this is, it's from a website called Whyfiles, WHYFILES.org. And this particular post is called, it has the recycling logo, that green arrow those green arrows in a triangle called, that we would see as a recycling logo. And it's called Talking Trash. Farm fields, the ideal resting place for toxic waste, ? Last summer, in a series of revelations that nearly snagged a Pulitzer Prize, Seattle Times writer Duff Wilson documented a nationwide practice of recycling some industrial wastes as fertilizer. Gaps in state and federal regulation were allowing toxic and radioactive wastes that contain nutrients to be combined with fertilizer and spread without, let me say it a different way, without notifying farmers, much less consumers. And according to Wilson's series, in Gore, Oklahoma, a uranium processing plant is getting rid of low-level radioactive waste by licensing it as liquid fertilizer and spraying it over 9,000 acres of grazing land. In Tifton County, Georgia, more than 1,000 acres of peanut crops were wiped out by a brew of hazardous waste and limestone sold to unsuspecting farmers. And chemists, I guess that would be, I'm not sure what state that's in, highly corrosive lead-laced waste from a pulp mill is hauled to southwest Washington farms and spread over crops grown for livestock consumption. So if you think that hazardous waste is not entering the food supply, you just heard differently. So is this a public health emergency? I would say yes. So what we do, because we don't know what's in the fertilizer, we don't use it. And class, if you buy a bag of fertilizer and you open it up and you'll see these little BB size, we'll call them small pellets of fertilizer. you look, you'll see some brown ones and some tan ones and some white ones and some darker colored ones. You don't know what that is. You really don't know what that is. And if the fertilizer were 20-20-20, that would be 60% of the fertilizer is fertilizer, and 40% of it would be something else, like filler, like maybe industrial waste or something like that. Isn't that what you have learned, Werner?
Well, here it chimes right in what I said, what those radical students there in the 70s were saying. Basically, were blackmailing the public and the government. If the government doesn't give us jobs, we're going to cause problems. And we are the only ones who have the expertise to undo the problems. Basically, they created a market for themselves and their services and the chemical industries and the universities.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, there is another aspect, and that is referring to Gabe Brown. When I listened to his lecture, mm-hmm. there in North Dakota, and it chimes in with Joe Salatin, you know. And,
let's talk about Joel Salatin. I've met him. He has a farm in Virginia. It's in the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia, and it's called Polyface Farms. Polyface Farms.
Yeah. And basically fully integrated farming, you know, not just only grown one single, being the focus on one single commercial crop, but fully integrated farming, you know, organic farming, where everything works together, the different species and the rotations of the use. And this is what Gabe Brown was mentioning. And Dr. Don Huber had put his emphasis on maintaining the health of the soil. And the organic soil is a biological water filter. And Gabe Brown, he compared the commercial, the soil in the commercial farms versus the soil the way he has built up within a short, a few decades, where he has built up the organic matter. Whereas the commercial type of farming is depleting the soil of valuable humus, that's the basis of the biological water filter. Gabe Brown and the organic farmers that put plenty of organic matter back into the soil, they have actually built up the humus content of the soil. And that is basically an investment in the future and an investment in not just only of the soil, but of the health of the environment and the health of the water supply, which in turn is investment into the future of humanity, of the coming generations. But what is going on now? Short-term gain for long-term pain, you know. And when I look here at the province where I have been farming there for 47 years, it is basically a basket case. Here, Atlantic Canada and the New England states, they are basically basket cases, where the successive governments have been pushing unsustainable farming practices. And they have brought it now to a situation where here in New Brunswick we got roughly about 750,000 people living, you know, on an area where over in the old country we were producing food for over 15 million people. And now, after 75 years, the experts in the Department of Agriculture and in the Environment Department in charge, it has become to the sorry state of affair where this province is now producing food for roughly about 75,000 people. About 90% of the food is being imported. In Nova Scotia is a similar situation, and the same in the New England states. So, this expertise costs a lot of money, puts the regions into debt. Here in New Brunswick, it's 750,000 people. The provincial government has allowed an accumulation of the total debt of annually of $400 million. Every year, the debt of the province goes up to the tune of $400 million on a population with 750,000 people.
Werner, when we come back, I'm going to tell you what I learned about the price of butter yesterday. I couldn't believe it. Werner Bock's with us. We're talking about farming. And do you think food prices are going up? I was absolutely shocked. We'll be right back. So yesterday I happened to be in the big city, and I walked into a supermarket, and I looked at, I just wanted to get a feel for some of the latest prices. Butter was $5.69 a pound for Land O'Lakes butter, $5.69 a pound in Springfield, Missouri. I thought, wow. So I said to my mom, what do you remember the price of butter? And so she was probably thinking in the 70s, 69 cents. I remember in the early 1950s, late 1960s, late 1950s, early 1960s, butter at 39 cents a pound. So I looked it up, and I have some prices for butter. 1913, the price of butter was 40.09. So just a little bit over, roughly 41 cents. I remember it at 39. So 2 cents less than that. That was 1913. And I remember it in the late 1950s, early 1960s at 39 cents a pound. In January of 2013, this post says that butter was $3.50 a pound. And I'm telling you, yesterday, 3 years later, it's $5.69 a pound. At least it was in the supermarket where I was in Springfield. Now, when it went up to $3.50 a pound, that was a 756% increase. So if you don't think that food prices are increasing, take another look. Werner, are you seeing similar jumps in your neck of the woods in New Brunswick, Canada?
Well, I can give you just one example from several years back. For decades, the provincial government had propped up this one meat packing plant, Hub Meat Packers here in Moncton. There's the other 4 or 5 meat packing plants in Fredericton and around the province. They didn't have access to those grants, so they went out of business. And in the end, there was Hub Meat Packers left. They were the only meat packing plant where the farmers, the hog farmers, and the cattle farmers could sell their cattle to, aside from a few small slaughterhouses, But most of the meat supply came from Hub Meat Packers. And then there several years back, Hub Meat Packers got bought up by Maple Leaf Food. But before they handed it over, Hub Meat Packers handed it over to Maple Leaf Food, the provincial government the week before gave them another $1.4 million unconditional grant. And then they handed it over to Maple Leaf Food. And the first action of business of Maple Leaf Food was to close Hub Meat Packers down. Basically, cut off the livestock producer from their processing facility. And that was on top of the BSE crisis, where Western Canada, who supplied a surplus in beef, were being cut off from the American market. So they dumped it here in on eastern Canada and here in New Brunswick, And so we beef farmers got hit with a double whammy, an increased supply of beef on the market, plus the doing away with the removing the last processing facility. So the farmers had to ship their cattle all the way to Quebec and Ontario, up to 1,000 miles to have them processed, And within 1 month, the price for a hamburger in the stores nearly tripled. So much of the government being there for the people. It's a bunch of BS.
Great points, Werner. And I can tell you, in our neck of the woods, if you want to go to a small meat processor, it's going to be about, for us, it's over a 50-mile round trip to the closest one. And I only know of two. And they're at opposite ends of our neck of the woods. And the closest one is about 50-mile round trip away. Werner, thanks so much for being with us. I just walked back into the studio and after getting a cup of water, and I heard the intro. I just made it. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, hour number 2 of USAPrepares.com. Rich Sheben's with us. Off-grid, Montana.com. And Rich, last week we were talking about President-elect Donald Trump, and what can we do to help him? Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for basically allowing me to do a presentation last week, Vince, and basically giving me the microphone. It was an honor to do that on your show. And I just feel that we're in a position right now that we have an opportunity to, for example, not just bring back fairness and eliminate these politically correct buzzwords like equality, fairness, tolerance, diversity, and accountability and transparency, which have been hijacked by definition to be used as a tool of division. We have an opportunity to create synergy, which the powers that be, the super billionaires who are addicted to power, money, and control, don't want. They want us to infight. They want to divide. They want to get rid of culture, traditions, and heritage. So I think it's up to us as free-thinking individuals to exercise our First Amendment right and give ideas and solutions not just to Donald Trump, but to the middle class, to speak up, to say it like it is. And I think the opportunity that we've all been waiting for many decades is finally here. So, I gave that pretty big presentation last week, Vince, and I don't know what kind of format you want to do today. I know we spoke last night briefly. Did you want to discuss any of the ideas and solutions that I gave last week, or do you just want to have dialogue today?
Well, let me share with you some of my research. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump has announced his 100-day plan, what he wants to do in the first 100 days. Mm-hmm. Let me share with you what this says. It's, let's see, the website is called WIVB.com, Channel 4. And it says that he wants to set congressional term limits. I'm all for that. Absolutely, I'm all for that.
I agree.
One term. Never re-elect anyone. We've been saying that for years. Never re-elect anyone. But the problem with that is that many people who go to the polls to offer their opinion as to whom they would like to see in office, many people will say, those Congress critters are thugs, but not my guy. My guy's good. Many people will say, yeah, those sheriffs and deputies are thugs, but not my guy. My guy's good. That's the problem. So we need to throw them all out. That way we won't make any mistakes, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons I always talk about how we can't have a different tiered system of special rules, laws, and accountability based on what group you're in. And that stands for principle. That basically stands for every scenario out there, and that includes Congress, because when you have outside money and foreign money coming in and giving different congressmen or senators certain monies for certain favors or special interest groups or donations, this has to stop. That's why there's a different system for the rich, for the aristocracy, and us, a different system for the poor or the serfs or slaves, which we are. And that's why they use different terminology. Like, if we say barter and we're in public doing barter, the IRS comes after us. When the super wealthy do it, they call it quid pro quo. And there's different definitions and terminology and semantic propaganda and Hegelian dialectic for everything. And this is why I'm so adamant, Vince, about having the same rules, laws, and accountability for everybody.
Mm-hmm. I remember being in banking, and I remember human research, talking about, we need more diversity. But I never remember anybody saying, you know what, we're low on Italians. We're low on the Irish. We're low on the English. We better get some more of them to, kind of balance this thing out. That never happened. And I also don't remember anybody saying, Finelli's doing a terrible job, but we better keep him because he's the only Italian guy we got here. Rich Scheben, that never happened. The only reason that I was in banking is because my superiors thought I was contributing more than they were paying me. And they thought that, I was their best bet at that time. Okay? I mean, I don't know if I'd be their best bet now, but at that time, they thought I was their best bet. Otherwise, they would have thrown me overboard. Isn't that what you found out when you were working? Didn't you see the same thing?
Well, I saw that and much more. And that's one of the reasons why we're in a situation now that the people are waking up en masse, because we've lowered the bars of standards and expectations to create this diversity, this equality. Again, all these politically correct buzzwords that really have been, again, hijacked by definition to be used as a tool for division and not create synergy. Let me give a few examples since we're talking about this, if you don't mind, Vince. I remember when Bill Clinton's rape victims came forward, some woman on The View, which I don't have television, haven't had it for over 10 years, don't plan on getting it. I get all my news and information off of the new media on the internet, as you know. But this woman on The View called Bill Clinton's rape victims tramps. So when you have, again, different set of rules, laws, and accountability based on what group you're in, whether it be aristocracy, skin pigmentation, gender, sexual orientation, religion, et cetera, you dilute the value and appreciation for everything. What you do is when you lower the bars of standards and expectations, you are decreasing respect and trust, and pretty soon all these people on the left are basically all crying wolf. And you know what happens when you keep saying that on and on and on? Pretty soon no one even listens because you have no credibility. And since we're talking about this particular subject of diversity, let me just add a little bit to that, if you don't mind. I remember reading a satirical article a few years ago, and when I give the presentation, the rise of political correctness and the fall of the middle class, I talk about how the middle class and poor has melded in with each other, and that's why I refer to that, the serfs, as the bottom 93% of Americans. And it was meant to be satirical, but yet it was also meant to hold water and have truth behind the messaging of this article. And they were talking about sex workers. If you're in the bottom 93% of Americans and you hire somebody for sex for short term, they're called hookers, whores, and prostitutes. But if you're in the wealthy category, they're called mistresses. Unless they sue, then they're referred to as the gold diggers. These hypocrisies, folks, and this is why I talk about practice what you preach laws almost on every show. And I was watching a YouTube video just 2 days ago, Vince, on Megyn Kelly. We all know who she is, right? And she was on the Howard Stern show, and Howard was saying how sexy you are, how attractive you are, and a bunch of other expletives regarding compliments on her looks and appearance. We all know she's a beautiful woman, but she's also a very intelligent woman. But when Donald Trump and other people come on her show and they give any complimentary compliments of any kind regarding a woman because she might be good-looking, they get trashed. So these hypocrisies are happening more and more all the time. This is why I I'm redundant on the same rules, laws, and accountability for everybody. And if we don't have these practice what you preach laws, and in other words, all laws are non-exempt. We all use the word hypocrisy. I do too. But it's not going to carry us into common sense and logic, because we've given up common sense and logic for corruption and political correctness. And this is why, for example, gun control. If you are an opponent or a proponent of gun control, getting rid of guns, and you're hiring bodyguards to cover your butt, or you're living behind a wall with security, that should be illegal. If you preach socialism and you live lavishly, it should be illegal. All this, what we need to do is hold people's feet to the fire. And I really believe this, Vince. If we were to have practice what you preach laws, whether it be statewide, countywide, regional-wide, or nationwide, a lot of all this crap wouldn't be happening. Like, here's another example. Let's look at the Portland, Oregon riots. Yesterday, of course, just like every day, there's been a bunch of arrests. Well, the majority of people didn't even vote. They haven't even registered. There's no credibility to people who are doing these behaviors. And this is one of the reasons why we have to talk about practice what you preach laws. Because the hypocrisy from one group to the other, we can't allow different rules, laws, and accountability based on what group you're in, especially if it's based on derogatory, degrading terms like protectionist group status or victim group status. This should not be allowed. We've got to stop respecting official authorities. We have to start respecting strength and guts, especially not perceived power. And that's why practice what you preach laws, Vince, I think is so important.
Another item that is on Donald Trump's 100-day plan is hiring freeze on all federal employees. But he's exempting military, public safety, and public health. I'd like to see a hiring freeze on all federal employees, including everyone. And I think that would be a great start, a hiring freeze. And then I'd like to see an elimination of, I'm just off the top of my head, 10% a year until we reduce the federal government size by, bring it down to 25% of what it is now. That would be good, in my opinion, because I don't think we need all these rules and regulations. And that ties directly in to eliminating regulations. We'll talk about that in a minute. Pastor Rich Sheaven's with us, offgridmontana.com. Rich, I mentioned that Donald Trump's first 100-day plan includes a hiring freeze on all federal employees, exempting military, public safety, and public health. And that's interesting because the military supported him and the cops supported him, so looks like he's going to exempt them from a hiring freeze. And then I link that to creating an environment that for every federal regulation, 2 existing regulations must be limited. Now, I think that's a start. I'd like to see creating an environment that for every new federal regulation, 100 regulations must be eliminated. What do you think about the hiring freeze and the federal regulations?
Well, I think it's absolutely appropriate. In fact, I'm going to dovetail into some of the mentality of the rioters, whether it be in Portland or anywhere around the country. They've interviewed a lot of these people that don't even know what they call Trump a Nazi and a fascist. They don't even know what it means. Basically, what that is top-down centralized control from the central government that have created an alliance with big corporate oligarchies. So if he wants to reduce regulations to create growth in small and medium-sized business, that's the way to do it. Because the regulations, the lobby, and even minimum wage, high minimum wage laws prevent small and medium-sized businesses to compete against the corporate oligarchies. In fact, I got tons of articles here I could use as examples. One is titled "U.S. Media Blackout: Italian Court Rules Vaccines Cause Autism," and this was a GlaxoSmithKline drug. And another one, pharmaceutical giant GlaxoSmithKline accidentally, in quotes, released 45 liters of concentrated live polio virus in the environment in Belgium. When you have the big corporate oligarchies, big government, the big courts, and the big press basically protecting one another, that's what fascism is. And that's what we have today. We only have 4 to 6% of the population who are self-employed and get their primary income from that self-employment. We have the big corporate oligarchies, we have big government, and we can't afford any of them. In fact, our pensions, folks, okay, not just government pensions, but the top 130 corporations are broke. They're in the red. They're trillions of dollars in the red. So this system can't continue. It's unsustainable. And Donald Trump is inheriting the absolute worst financial, economic, social, and political situation that any president has ever inherited, Vince.
You mentioned vaccines. I have read, and I have in front of me, and I want to be very careful how I do this, but there is a major health organization, huge health organization. And this email that I have seen a copy of says that there won't be any exceptions. There will be termination of employees who do not get their flu shot by a specific deadline. I'm talking about hospital and healthcare workers. If they don't take this mandatory flu shot, of which they have no idea what the contents are, they will be terminated. Interesting. So there you have a public-private partnership, as I see it. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to me that there's a lot of pressure to get these flu shots. And even when I walk into like Sam's Club, they are willing to give me vaccines for free. Can you imagine getting something like that for free? Wouldn't that be wonderful? I don't want it, and I'm not taking it. And I say to Mrs. Finelli, geez, if we only had the time, we could get that vaccine. Wouldn't that be wonderful? And then we walk right by. Of course we have the time if we wanted, but it's idiotic, because I am not going to let someone inject some liquid into my bloodstream, and I have no idea who that person is, nor do I have any idea what's in that injection. It's idiotic to do that. And to think that your doctor knows what's in that vaccine, that's idiotic as well. Because they're relying on what they've been told and what they've read from some company. Is that right?
Absolutely. I'll go more detail after the break.
We'll be right back. Off-Grid Montana with Rich Scheben, offgridmontana.com. Rich, you're talking about vaccines.
Yeah, and I'm just going to back up for a second. We got to remember, folks, that the left, the liberals, the progressives, all those names, they're all a disguise for a globalist hijacking, okay? What they practice and what they preach is totally opposite, because they preach tolerance. They don't want hate. They say everybody's sexist and racist, and yet they are, and they're also the most violent. So they're basing every decision on focus groups and computer algorithms, not for the benefit of freedom, liberty, prosperity, or the betterment of the American people, especially the bottom 93%, but it's basically based on what they can get away with regarding their addiction to power, money, and control. Now, that addiction includes everything from money printing to vaccines to taking over healthcare to basically controlling every part of our life. Now, going back to vaccines with a little more specificity, the AMA, the FDA, is owned by Big Pharma. And for those of you who have heard me on the air before or read my book, you know that I was in Big Pharma for over 20 years. And they are a very corrupt organization. That's why I basically referred to those two GlaxoSmithKline articles earlier in the show. What I think we should do, again, since Donald Trump made it very clear that it's going to be by, for, and of the people, okay? So I think what we need to do is be vocal and grab them on a microphone. And one of the things that I would suggest regarding Big Pharma is there should be a $10 million fine every week when Big Pharma doesn't come out with cures. And I don't mean little things like allergic rhinitis, or I'm talking about cures of stuff that kill you, like cancer and hepatitis and HIV and things, and AIDS and stuff like that. There should be a $10 million fine for every week that they don't come out with cures, because forever, for decades, they've done everything to eliminate vitamins, homeopathy, naturopath doctors, and some of these poor doctors even got murdered. What we need to do is have the people stand up, because what Big Pharma has done is they've managed symptoms of disease for profit. Manage symptoms that has nothing to do with cures or even prevention for that matter. They want people to be sick. And I think there's plenty of evidence out there, folks, and I think most of your audience, Vince, has read about the fact that there has been cancer in some of these vaccines, and they've been caught. So, and it's so hard to sue these days, and that's one of the reasons in my suggestions last week, and I've said it before in your show, we need to eliminate and replace judges and attorneys that are all bought and paid for by the special interests and the donors and the big bucks. We need to convene grand juries in every county in America, and the people make the decisions, from lawsuits to legislation and everything in between. Vince?
Well, I was thinking about what you were saying, and I was also thinking about the same rules should apply to all of us. And one of those is if at the Utah Data Center, there's a sign that says, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. And so in that light, I would like to see that if you are a government employee, if you are a politician and you're provided with a cell phone, then that cell phone number should be public information. Because obviously they have nothing to fear because they're not hiding anything, right? And so let's know where they live, because they have nothing to fear because they're not doing anything wrong, allegedly. So let's learn where they live. Let's have a database that's accessible to all of us on the internet and in the courthouses for the local politicians and government employees, their exact home address. Why? Because they have our exact home address, right? They know where we live. So I'm looking at this NSA data center in Utah, and it says here there's an infographic. It says citizen data. Now, this is what they're collecting. They're collecting internet searches, browsing history, downloads, emails, SMS messages, mobile data, social media, credit, debit transactions, surveillance cameras, commuter records, GPS records, medical information. That's what they're collecting. Then what do they do with it? Well, they match it, they store it, and they share it, and they analyze it in the Utah Data Center. And then what are the overall applications of that data? Well, they decide and they act. How do they act? They act with more surveillance and monitoring, suspicious activity reporting, that's SAR, and terrorist screening, center alerts, and then the Patriot Act detention. That's what they do with the data. That's what they say they do with the data. I'm sure there's much more that they do with the data. If you look at this infographic, you will be absolutely shocked, class. And I'll post it. I'll post that.
Yeah.
So
it's
we're talking about we got to stop this. We have to stop this. And that's one of the things I would like to see Donald Trump do. Stop this NSA, FBI, CIA, and tracking, monitoring. I'd like to see these street cameras go away. I don't even want to go in public. As a matter of fact, I was thinking, what kind of a cowboy hat would I like to get for every member of the family? Because I just don't want to be captured everywhere I go with images. And Captain John Regan mentioned yesterday that he's grown a beard. Now, I didn't ask him if he grew the beard for purposes of just, saving time shaving, or maybe he just doesn't want to be captured, with his face everywhere he goes.
Well, we have, this is a statistic that I read not too long ago. We have 10 million more government workers than we do manufacturing. And going back to what we were talking about before, as we've talked about this privately, maybe even on the air, there's zero doubt, if anybody who does any reading, that the powers that be want to reduce population. And one of the stories in my book was the Dr. Stanislaw Brzezinski. He created this antineoplasm therapy to cure cancer. He was curing cancer up to 80%. And, of course, big pharma, cancer research, all the people who's making money, they've been trying to sue him and jail him for decades. Right now, I think there's a salesman, one of the top salesmen who sells MSM, and I can't remember off the top of my head what this powder stands for. Everything's an acronym these days. And he's going to be going possibly to jail. He's got a court appearance coming up. It could be as much as 37 years. I saw this on the internet. So the powers that be want to do everything in their power to eliminate people from making their own decisions and controlling their own destiny, including their own health. And this is why we need to have those practice what you preach laws. This is why we need to reward heroes like the Julian Assanges, the James O'Keefes, the Edward Snowdens of the world. All these people, and we really have to have conversations about our role with the Fed, the IMF, NATO, UN. We need to get our internet back. All the things, we're in for a major. I'll be shocked if we go through 2017 without a major economic financial collapse because of all the corrupt monetary policies coming from the Fed, the central banks, and the big banks, and the repercussions of the too big to fails and too big to jails that the middle class have bailed out all these people. So we're in for, like I said, Donald Trump. If he can create any type of smooth sailing with what the powers that be have done already, it's going to be a miracle in itself. So that's one of the reasons that I'm creating these solutions and ideas, not just for the middle class, but hopefully Donald Trump's people will pick up on some of this information, and it can make a difference for our country, Vince.
MSM, methyl sulfonol methane, and it's easy to know why it's referred to as MSM. Just try to pronounce it. And it improves joint health. It improves allergies. And let's see, what else does it do? It decreases joint inflammation, improves flexibility, and collagen production. So it's well researched, and it says those are the benefits of it. So we have people who are recommending do-it-yourself help, over-the-counter help, and it's being suppressed. And you're right. You're absolutely right. If you just look around at the number of cancers, every family has them.
Mm-hmm.
And people are dying horrific deaths from it. And where does it come from? Well, it comes from things like poisoning the soil with radiation. It comes from the toxic chemicals in the air, and the toxins in our food, and the toxins in our water. And then if that's not enough, we get toxins through immunizations. And we get toxins through where we work because they spray for bugs. And then we get toxins in wheat. It's everywhere. So what else would you like to see Donald Trump do in his...
Well, I touched on this last week. Anybody who incites or funds violence, Vince, and it doesn't matter who their name is or who their corporation is. You know, I'm sure by now you heard about the CEO and some of the Hollywood producers, directors, and actors who are inciting violence towards Donald Trump and rape Melania signs and all this. This is nothing short of sedition and treason as far as I'm concerned. And when you have 62 people who have a higher net worth, 62 people in the world that have a higher net worth of the bottom 50% of the world, you know, the only stimuli that they have left that they can't achieve is power, money, and control of the masses. And these people own the 6 corporations that control 95% of the media. Now, I definitely, it's very obvious to me that the American people have woken up, same with the people in the UK, and that's why you have Brexit, and I think there's going to be more Brexits around the EU. We have to realize that you can't get a job and keep a job unless you do it through hard work, effort, proven results, and qualifications. When everything is dependent on what group you're in, we're only going to divide and degrade America more, Vince.
Yeah, we have to do what they do. Gang up on them. We'll be right back. Rich Scheben, offgridmontana.com. Rich, you know, I am really looking forward to not hearing Hillary's voice nor Barry's voice in the future. I'm really looking forward to the media not covering them and having to listen to. It's like chalk on the blackboard to me. You know, that it just irritates me. And so Barry Soetoro said that he's warning. I don't know who he's warning. I guess anyone will pay attention to him. It's hard to want to pay attention to him, but he's warning for the need to guard against a rise in nationalism at home and abroad. Now, I have a problem with that because we don't have any heroes in the United States anymore. We don't have anybody to look up to. And except Donald Trump is showing us that we can look up to him and hopefully his team. Hopefully. I mean, I'm not sure. But what company would say, you know, we're no worse than anybody else? What company would say, you know, our competitors' products are just as bad as ours? What company would do that? We have the opportunity now to return to being proud of being Americans. We have the opportunity not to beat up small countries because, well, you know, it's us against our enemies, and instead of having declaring war on our enemies, we'll just have a little skirmish over there, and we'll just beat up these small countries, you know, just as a way of saying this is what we could do if we attacked our enemies. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, the kind of things we do. It's embarrassing to be an American under the regime of President Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. I mean, and George Bush and the other George Bush. It's been miserable. This is the first time in years, decades, that we have the opportunity to be nice on the planet, not to be an aggressor and a bully. And it's an opportunity for us to throw overboard the government bureau rat parasites. I'm looking forward to that, Rich.
Well, and this is why we got to go to truth-based, objective, facts-based, not propaganda, subjective, emotional, opinion-based media. This is why the mainstream media needs to be demoted. I think with Bannon in there, I think what Trump needs to do is bring up give promotions to the USA Prepares, the Breitbarts, the Infowars, the Drudges of America, and the debates, the information to the public, the liaisons, the interviews need to go on the new media. I think the old media is dead. And you talked about, saying, well, our product is not as bad as that person's product. You're right. That's the MO today. Well, what we need to do is bring back jobs and goods and services based on hard work, effort, proven results, and qualifications, and not by all these affirmative action, divisive federal programs that basically splits everybody up in groups and basically degrades all the groups by lowering the bars of standards and expectations. And one thing that I want to talk about briefly that I mentioned on your show last week, I'm really a big proponent of eliminating the Electoral College and the present definition of the popular vote. If you look at the country as a whole after this election, not only did Donald Trump win the Electoral College, but he also won the popular vote. But if you look at the map, okay, and this information with the popular vote just came out in the last couple of days, folks. Okay, he won the popular vote. And when you look at the map, the whole country's red. There's basically a few counties in California, New York City, District of Columbia, and a little bit in Illinois that voted for him. And we cannot allow a few areas in the nation to tell the rest of the country, the 95% of the red, how to live, because there's too many dead people voting. I've read reports that there's about 3 million illegal immigrants voted. They've bussed people around. There's 3,200 counties in the country, Vince. If 1,601 wins for a particular candidate, that should be the winner of the election.
I really like the idea of voting county by county and telling those votes. That makes a lot of sense to me. It really does. And I think more people would participate in voting. And I think it would help bring back pride in the United States of America, something that we've lost. And we haven't lost it because of us. We've lost it because of our government, the corporation that is posing as government here in the United States. Rich Shealy, thanks so much. Blessed above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.